1. Written by Internal Battles. I've never told more than one person this story, as I always feared the ridicule I was likely to get, due to the nature of the whole thing. Now that I know the sheer gravity of the situation, I feel like it's my obligation to other mothers and children out there. My daughter, Maggie, has always been a unique little thing, forever so full of a never-ending imagination, with a whole bunch of this fearless tenacity all jam-packed into her tiny little body. We would often find her playing in her room, making up these fantastical worlds with all of her little dollhouses, animals, and other toys. One day, while I was doing the dishes in the kitchen, I began to hear her talking to what seemed to be an imaginary friend. It was the typical kind of stuff. She would ask if they wanted to play Barbies, or something of that sort. Pause for a brief moment, and then say, "Okay, come on." I assumed she had created the imaginary friend out of the sense of loneliness and boredom. She had no siblings at this time, and was only about 2 or 3 years old back then. It didn't seem far-fetched at all to assume she created her own friend to fill some of her time. As the days went on, it became part of the routine to hear her in her room playing with her friend. But as the time grew longer, their play wasn't always fun and bubbly as it once had been. I would often hear her complaining of how her friend was playing, saying things like, "That was mean," and "You can't play like that." Finally, I decided I needed to have a talk with my daughter about how we are expected to play with our friends. How we should always be kind and nice. The conversation went on for some time, and at the end, I finally realized I hadn't before asked her what her friend's name was, to which she replied, "Its name is One, Mom." I thought to myself, what an odd name for an imaginary friend, but I had seen Inside Out, and I guess it was no better or worse than Bing Bong, so I told myself it was just a child with a simple imagination, and left it at that. I mean, what else could it be, right? A few days passed before I noticed her playing with her imaginary friend again, but right away I recognized the dynamic had changed. Maggie was constantly complaining of how mean One was being, how they didn't play nice with her, and she didn't want them to be her friend anymore. But it wasn't until the day I heard her begin to cry out in her room for me saying that One had hurt her, that I realized things weren't as sweet and innocent as I had originally assumed. Not knowing what it was exactly that I was facing in that room, I was pretty much winging it at this point. So I stormed into her room, marching right into the middle and planted my feet strongly on the ground. I mustered up every bit of energy I could, and basically yelled at the top of my lungs, "Get out of my house! You are no longer welcome here. Stay away from my daughter and my family." Like I said, at this point, I was completely winging it. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I knew something wasn't right. I needed my daughter to believe she was safe, and quite frankly, I think I needed to believe we were safe. With each line I said, I felt myself welling up with an unexplainable energy, saying each one a bit louder than the one before. Having always been a believer of the forces of nature, I paused for one moment, gathering that newfound energy, and let out one last demand. "Mother Nature, hear my plea, and as you listen, please watch over me. There is something in my home threatening my family, and I need you to take care of it for me." I know how it sounds, believe me I do, but I am a mom. My whole day is turned into silly songs and rhymes, so I went with what I knew, and I sent my plea out to the universe, hoping something would help me. After that, I didn't notice One around anymore, and my daughter never complained about it again. Knowing full well, though, how people would perceive this if I ever told anyone, I kept the whole thing to myself, honestly, not even telling my husband, out of the fear that he would just make fun of me. It was about a week or so later that I was on my phone with my girlfriend Carly. Our daughters are real close in age and have always played together, so we often would call one another in the morning over coffee. Then we would make some kind of plans to get together later. As the conversation took its normal rounds, I asked her what was new with her little one. She proceeded to tell me that her daughter recently started doing the cutest thing. She has an imaginary friend she plays with. and its name is 1.